Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. Here's your host, Chris Lee. Commodore fans, on your feet. It's time to anchor down.
Welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast, presented by Dr. Jody Jones, DDS. We are part of the 440 Sports Network. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Our guest today, Andrew Allegretta. He is one of the play-by-play voices for Vanderbilt Athletics. We will talk about the win over Elon and the game coming up against Wake Forest. We have a new sponsor today, and this sponsor is sponsoring our guest line. Our new sponsor is Michael Kendrick of the Kendrick Group. Michael is a local carpenter and a longtime Vanderbilt fan. He builds bookshelves, cabinets, picture frames, furniture, and made-to-order items. If you've got sports memorabilia or something like that that you would like to have a case for, have made into furniture, Michael is your guy. I have had a signed Dale Murphy jersey for probably 15 years. I could not find anything that I wanted to display it in, so I went to Michael and said, make me something I can put this jersey in. I've got it up on my wall in my office now. It looks terrific. He's a true craftsman. And if you were in the market for some custom woodwork, give Michael a call or text his phone, 615-830-9548, and tell him you heard about it on the podcast. Now, on to our interview with Andrew. Andrew Allegretta joins us. It is Tuesday afternoon. I've gotten back home from Clark Lee's press conference. We are about halfway between Elon and Wake Forest, and thanks for joining us today, Andrew.
As always, Chris, how are you?
Doing well. I guess Vanderbilt is doing well at 2-0, albeit I think Clark Lee obviously would have liked to close that game a little differently than he did, but they got the win, and it's probably better to learn lessons like that when you win than when you lose.
I would say so. I mean, he spoke to as much on the Commodore Hour Monday night, basically saying that, I mean, and this is his phrasing, not mine, that they let off the gas. And I think that was fairly obvious to see. What was hard for them to do is get back on the gas once they got off the gas a little bit there. It's a lesson to learn. I think it's coaching cliche that we're going to put together 60 minutes of football or 40 minutes of basketball or 9 innings of baseball, all 3 phases, whatever. Rarely do you have those games in which all of the phases all of the time work, but certainly Vanderbilt understanding that they're not a team that even if it's not working for you, can you mentally let off the gas? And Clark said as much either. I'm not breaking new ground there. Not a program at the moment that can't perform at its peak and be successful. So, lesson learned, but they sit here 2-0 with an offense that's put up more than 100 points in the first 2 games. And generally speaking, there's been very clear progressions with this program in year 2 so far.
Yeah, and we were at the press conference today. I asked him, do you wish you'd played more guys? And he basically said, yeah, I think they felt like maybe they could have done that over again, although there were some allusions to, in so many words, trust. I mean, it just was so humid that night. I do think that, and look, this is, in a way it's silly because Elon is an FCS team and they get fewer scholarships, and so there's that too. But I do think that Vanderbilt played 36 guys between offense and defense, and having some of those guys maybe a little fresher at the end of the game. And Clark Lee did say that we were about one score, many points during the night to maybe going to some of those guys. But anyway, however it happened, I do think that had something to do with it, perhaps.
Yeah, I would think so. I think the obvious position to point to would be the defensive line at this point, which is not necessarily the fault of, purposeful rotations as it is injuries throughout the course of course, last season and this year without Davis, without Lee, without Babst. And I believe Ducati went down for a series or two throughout the course of that game, too. He came back in. But you're talking about 4 guys that you can't go to right there. And I mean, look, to me, the play of the game in terms of like this whole narrative that we're having right now about Vanderbilt not putting them away and all that kind of stuff, the play of the game that absolutely was able to keep them in it from an Elon perspective was that 75-yard touchdown to Brayboy. And they had him. Vandy had him right there, 21-0, a chance to, kind of finish it off in the same way that they finished off Hawaii at the start of the second half there. And they had a busted assignment there. I think DeRickey got a little bit shallow on his assignment, and he got beat over the top by a fast wide receiver. And credit to the quarterback, McKay, that made a good throw. So, that's the margin though, right, Chris? Like, if you are Vanderbilt and you've got somebody up against the ropes, your margin is one kind of shallow field positioning by DeRickey right away from taking that game and cementing it versus kind of this narrative that we're dealing with throughout the course of this week. So that's the margin there if you're Vanderbilt. I don't think anybody internally is surprised by that margin. That's okay. It's just, trying to get better and make those plays when you have them.
Well, and give the defense credit. Elon had the ball twice at 2 plays at the half-yard line on third and whatever, fourth and whatever. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, it
shouldn't have come down to that.
76 plays. This is like 76 plays to 62 plays, right? And there was some 3 and outs there in the second half by the offense. Like, it just didn't. They it felt fairly obvious throughout the course of the game to me, and I'm always like somewhat cautious to put my own perspective on how they're playing on them without talking to them. But when Clark Lee says, yeah, they kind of let off the gas, then, well, they kind of let off the gas. But, you're 2-0. There's always lesson. Like, it depends on how you extract the lesson from that moment. They punched Hawaii in the teeth. They punched Elon in the teeth, and then they just couldn't bury Elon. So there's a lesson to be extracted from that. And you just hope that this group takes that lesson and carries it to Wake Forest.
And on the other hand, there was Mike Wright.
Yeah, he was great. He's not. I still want to see him continue to evolve as a passer. That's not a unique statement either, right? I'm sure his coaches want him to continue to evolve as a passer. Clark said something really interesting on Commodore Hour last night, as we're recording this today, about Mike's running too. His work in the off season in the strength and conditioning program, and I'm trying to get this right so I communicate it clearly. If not, folks can go to the Anchor podcast page, download the Commodore Hour and listen to it themselves. Basically saying that Mike did work in the off season that gave him strength and acceleration on more angles. So he was doing a lot of cutting at right angles last year. He would try to cut hard 90 degrees one way, hard 90 degrees the other way. He's worked on his agility and mobility to the point where he can slice better. I guess that's perhaps one way to say it. And then he can get from his slicing to his top end speed faster. So he's able to break the 44-yard touchdown run this year when maybe last year he wouldn't have, or the 87-yard touchdown run this year when he wouldn't have. So, we talk about his passing game and the continued growth of that, but it is probably not to be forgotten, the strength and conditioning work that allowed him to not just be a good runner, but an even better runner than he was a season ago. So his game has seen holistic growth, not just from a passing standpoint.
This season of the Vandy Sports Podcast has been made possible by my friend Dr. Jody Jones, DDS. When it comes to general or cosmetic dentistry services, Jody is the best in Nashville. Just check out his client list. It testifies to that. He sees movie stars, music stars, athletes, coaches, you name it. Jody is the dentist of choice for stars in Nashville, but he sees regular folks like you and I as well. What people love about Jody's office is the ambiance. It's relaxing, it's friendly. Someone described it to me as a tooth spa. Whether your needs are general or cosmetic, go see Jody today. Call him 615-270-2322. See him at 55 Music Square East, not far from downtown or the Vanderbilt campus. Jody is a former Vanderbilt football player and a huge Commodore booster, so go and talk Vandy sports with him while you're there. Go see Jody Jones today. Thank him for his support of this podcast, because without it, this season would not be possible. Well, and the public got to see something that we had seen in spring and fall camp, and that was Jaden McGowan unleashed. That 75-yard touchdown throw was a terrific throw by Mike Wright. Jaden McGowan got open enough, made the catch, and once he caught the ball, sometimes you have to slow down to catch it or whatever, but there was none of that. He did a really good job, I thought, of making that play relatively in stride, and really once he got that separation, there was not going to be any catching him.
Well, give credit, too, to Mike and Jaden both on situational awareness. Elon jumped on that play. There was clear awareness that they had a free play, and perhaps Jaden took advantage of a defensive back that was a bit on his heels. And Mike was able to draw it back with, slightly less pressure than he typically has. So give them credit to know the situation and execute when they have the opportunity. That's part of football too, right? And I think that's obviously been part of the game that Mike is, from a passing perspective, growing within, is, understanding the moment within football, whether it's you've got this look so you can make these reads, or you've got someone jumping off sides so you can make that sort of throw, or you've got a timeout situation that you have to manage, like becoming a more thoughtful quarterback rather than being the guy with just this tremendous talent that people can't keep up with. He's obviously made strides in those areas. And that particular play, to Jaden's credit, but to Mike's credit as well, came with a lot of situational awareness. So that was good.
They had a lot of parts out for that game. You look at offensively, Julian Hernandez was out. Quincy Skinner was out. I think they've got a couple other receivers who maybe
Rocco
could help them. Rocco Griffin was out. Patrick Smith out. They were down a lot of parts for that game.
Which I'm sure was part of it too, right? It went right from Ray Davis to Chase Gillespie, and I think Chase Gillespie is going to be a nice player for Vanderbilt, but he's still a freshman, and you would rather Chase play, 5 to 10 snaps than 10 to 15 at this moment in his career, based on what he can do from a blocking understanding, from a hitting a hole of a standpoint, all that kind of stuff. So that's part of the slowdown, right? That's part of we went up 21-0 and then ended up winning, 42 to 31. You want those guys to get healthy, and it sounds like for the most part they're going to get healthy for the Wake Forest game. Again, talking with Clark on the radio show last night, it seems like there will be availability for most of those guys. Exactly how many snaps and what it looks like to be determined. But that's the good news, is that most of those guys, from Julian Hernandez to Rocco to Quincy to whoever else, it seems like most of them will have availability.
Yeah, no, the disappointing thing is it sounds like there's some defensive linemen that are going to be out a little bit longer.
Yeah, Davian Davis, Devin Lee, Braden Baps, that's long-term stuff. Again, obviously that touches on the depth issue, that touches on the number of snaps that Malik Langham, Cecil has to play. All of those guys have to play. But I don't necessarily know what you're supposed to do about it, other than just try to figure out the roster you got in front of you. So yeah, the health and the stamina and the well-being of all of those guys would be better if they had 3 to 4 more bodies out there throughout the course of a football game. But hey man, you play the cards you're dealt, and they're dealt a couple of cards right now to not have Davian Davis and Devin Lee, and those sure do sting. But okay, time for Malik Langham and Christian James and the rest of the crew to make their plays. I mean, and how good is Darren Agoo been, by the way?
Yeah, he's made some real plays for them at times.
Oh, goodness. He clearly has the level of athleticism that Vanderbilt is shooting for in the long run in totality with their roster. So, yeah, let it ride, young man. Go out there and get it.
Well, the team that's also been dealt a different hand of cards this week, maybe Wake Forest. It's starting to sound like Vanderbilt is going to see Sam Hartman on Saturday.
That's what I've seen from the old Bird app there, with Pete Thamel tweeting it out and everybody else tweeting it out at this point in time, which I don't know, right? The easy reaction is I mean, like, first off, you're happy for Hartman. Not to state the obvious, but, you want to go beat the best at their best and all that sort of stuff. So good for that young man. That obviously is a very important piece to their football program. The easy reaction is, too bad. Too bad it wasn't next week when he comes back instead of this week. I don't know. Like, I will never forget, ever, one of the more remarkable games I feel like I worked was a Tulane-Tulsa football game. And Tulane had Tulsa for 2.5, 3 stinking quarters. The starter goes down, the backup goes down, and then the third stringer comes in and slices Tulane. They get a Hail Mary at the end of the game and win it in overtime on a walk-off pick six. And you're talking about the third stringer that did that. So you never know, is my point. I'm sure Hartman will come in to First Bank Stadium very healthy, very ready, but it's still going to be his first game of the season. So you just don't know. For that kid's sake, I'm glad he's healthy, but simply going to the I wish he wasn't playing thing, while it might end up being true, it's not guaranteed to be true. You've seen any number of situations where the backup or the third stringer rolls in and you're going, wait a minute, can we have the starter back? So you just never know.
By the way, how used to it are you to saying First Bank Stadium?
I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not.
It helps pay the bills.
Well, that's the Chris. We're
Right.
at work. We're an athletic department at work these days.
Hey, no judgment here. I'm just saying it may take me a while to get used to it.
I know. And anyone that has been around the program longer than I have, 1,000%. They'll still be calling it Vanderbilt Stadium in 5 years. I don't have that sort of, what did they rename the Carrier Dome already? I can't remember. I cannot. I know they're working on that up at Syracuse, right?
I don't know that either.
Right, but that would be the equivalency for me.
Yeah,
like I went to school at Syracuse. That's been in my orbit for a long period of time. And if you extract Carrier off of that name, I'm going to have a hard time, and it's going to take me longer. I don't have the equity at the moment on Vanderbilt Stadium, but I know we're an athletic department at work. So if it provides some resources to do a few things, then giddy up.
Is the Carrier Dome air conditioned yet?
No, that's the whole. Well, I think it's going to be. That's the whole
Yeah.
joke, right? Like it's
right
named after an air conditioning and HVAC company, and it's a 98. It gets so hot in that building. I think it might be. I think they're working on it. They've had to change the roof, and I can't remember if they're finished with that project. Like the roof, the bubble, was on the verge of, going from. Let's see if I can't get it right. Convex to concave. Or
that sounds right.
I'm trying to.
I think that's correct.
Okay. Yeah, it was on the verge of collapsing. So yeah, that place is. I love it because I went there, but it could use a power wash and a fresh coat of paint.
Right. That has been around a while now.
1980.
Goodness, I didn't realize it was that old.
I think the first season was maybe built in 79 and the first season was 1980. There's the whole famous, the original, John Thompson beat Syracuse at Manley Fieldhouse, which is where they played basketball beforehand, and he opened up his press conference, or he closed his press conference by saying Manley Fieldhouse is officially closed. So Georgetown beat Syracuse, and he basically stomped on the legacy. So yeah, there's some fun story. Requiem for the Big East was a great 30 for 30.
Yeah, I would like to see that. I need to. Let's see. Let's just go to the mailbag. How about that?
Let's do it.
All right. The mailbag is sponsored by Sutherland and Belk, a family-owned injury law firm. If you or a loved one has been hurt in an accident, give Taylor or Russell a call, 615-846-6200. See what your rights are and if they can help. Let's see. The Superior wants to know your thoughts on Vanderbilt adding more sports in the future.
Well, volleyball's in the mix, which is nice. I mean, this may not be an engaging answer, but I don't know that I've got super strong feelings on it, not in the positive or the negative. We are here for the student athlete experience. And if we can provide those people with something positive, both from like a truly athletic competitive standpoint, I don't mean to reduce those sports at all, but that's a good thing. You can talk to any number of people that were tennis players in college, or, what sort of world that opened up for them. So from a really human experience level, it's always great to do that sort of stuff. I don't know that I have any deep thoughts. I mean, we're under sport by SEC standards, right? I don't know if it's 16, 17, or 18. I can't remember off the top of my head, but we're on the low end. So, if we can continue to provide opportunities like that and be competitive and compete for championships, I think that's great. And, I think, Chris, one of the things that you and I have talked about, and I've talked about with others, is, Candace Lee wants to compete at a championship level. So I don't think we're going to add a sport for the sake of handing out participation trophies. If we're going to add volleyball or whatever else might come up down the road, we're going to do it with the intent of being competitive in the SEC. So, I know that's the mindset from Candace Lee. So, I'm all for it.
Okay, next one. Peter wants to know the loudest stadium where you have called a game.
So I would always say, so it depends on how much you want to parse the language of that question. I never called a football game at Lane Stadium, but that's the loudest stadium I've ever been in. Doing sideline for Virginia Tech at home was significantly more challenging than doing sideline for Virginia Tech almost anywhere else. Just the way the stadium is constructed, the sound funnels down on you, and you have a really hard time hearing things, 5 feet in front of you. Meaning, if I'm trying to listen in on position group meetings, which I did frequently, oftentimes I was doing my best to read lips at Virginia Tech, whereas at Pittsburgh, for example, I could hear the whole conversation. Lane Stadium's the loudest football stadium I've ever been in, and I've been in, the shoe for Virginia Tech versus Ohio State, Clemson for a game, Notre Dame for a game, a battle at Bristol, Virginia Tech versus Tennessee. That felt gladiatorial, but it still wasn't as loud as Lane. In terms of me actually calling a football game, probably some of the games that we've done within the SEC are way up there. And, the kind of the quirky one that I always say sometimes too is I did a WNIT championship game between Virginia Tech women's basketball and Indiana at Assembly Hall. Those people love their hoops. I mean, I know we care about Memorial Magic, and, I've 100% heard all of the stories about, when Shane Foster goes off for everything he did, or what Memorial was back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And I wholeheartedly 100% believe that place was jumping. man, Assembly Hall was loud for a WNIT game, which I don't know if it's the loudest I've ever been in, but just the juxtaposition of a WNIT championship game and the energy of that crowd always stuck with me.
VA72 asks, when broadcasting in football, how do you decide to use the phrases down to the blank yard line or up to the blank yard line? I've heard different broadcasters do it differently.
What a remarkably nuanced question, and kudos. Who asked that question?
That's VA72.
Do you know DA72? Do we have a first name on DA?
I do not.
Okay, all right. I was gonna like if it's like David or something. I was gonna say
it's actually V is in Virginia Tech.
Oh, V.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I don't, Vince. Good question. You know what? It's the weird. So I would think when you're going to, and I don't really have a hard and fast policy. I think my gut reaction in real time is if you're up to something, you're working toward the 50, and if you're down to something or down inside, you're past the 50 and on the opposite end of the field. I think that's probably the most simplistic way to do it. I don't really. There are some announcers that are so very great at parsing through the technicalities of verbiage. And for better or for worse, I'm not necessarily one of those guys. I get more engaged and captivated by announcers who are really good at really good at being smooth, really good at controlling their voice, things that I very much wish that I was better at. So, my friend Mike Cousins did the LSU Florida State game for ESPN Radio, and he finished off his call with something along the lines of like LSU fans in melancholy sadness. Like he's super into like the how well can I articulate the English language in this situation. I wish I was a little bit better at that kind of stuff, but my ears are often grabbed by the performance end of our job rather than like the super parsing of up to versus down to. I do my best to get it right. Like I mean, I know the sport. I don't use inappropriate language or verbiage, but my brain, my brain gets fired up by guys that are really good at the performance end of what we do.
You may have your hands full with Wake Forest, given that offense that it runs.
The slow mesh thing?
Yes.
I need to go back and watch some of their game against VMI. But I will say this. The only reason I'm not, and I'm going to eat my words, the only reason I'm not terribly nervous, I guess is the right word, is because, for 2 years at Tulane, I saw Navy run the triple option, and like you're just holding your breath trying to figure out who's got the football, trying to learn the distinction between A back and B back and proper terminology in that offense. That was a mountain to climb. I remember doing that and being like, I don't know, I'm just going to do my best here. So I'll go back and I'll watch some stuff against VMI for them, and I am sure I will see some stuff where I'm going like, ooh, this is gonna be a little dicey. But you surround yourself with a good crew, a good spotter. Norm is great, Kevin's great, and we all find the football and we do our best not to goof it up too bad.
How far in are you into your prep for Wake?
Not far. To be candid with you, I would say I'm usually at a pretty good spot by the end of the day on Thursday, and then Friday is your, printing stuff out, setting up the booth, making sure you're organized, hit the road if you're leaving, whatever. So I try to put all prep work to bed by Thursday. So Monday is very much Commodore hour, clean up the messes from the previous week, whatever it is. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday are, gather interviews, prep, do other things that we're doing, like shoot social media videos or, I'm setting up a we got someone coming up to the booth for a halftime interview, setting up their credentials and all that kind of stuff. So that's where we are.
Well, it should be a fun one on Saturday. Big opportunity for Vanderbilt. If it could win this one, you don't want to say program-changing win. That might be a little much, but it might be close. So tell folks about your broadcast on Saturday, anything they need to know about game day, all those things. The floor is yours here.
Yeah, I do think you're right. I don't always buy into the must-win sort of stuff or the narrative stuff because the work ethic sort of kind of takes care of that for you. But I know there are people searching for validation and proof of concepts of what we've seen the first 2 weeks. And if you play well and or win against Wake Forest, you will have validated what you have felt over the previous 2 weeks. So I understand the weight of this moment and what it could do for the talking point within this city and within these walls for this football program. I would say there's a lot going on Saturday, which is great. We've got SEC Nation. I know they're at the Commons. For folks that maybe that's not their scene or they've got kids or whatever, provided that the weather holds out, we will be over part of Vanderbilt for our tailgate show. We're going to be in the family/kid zone area. So if you're out there with your kids, we'll be out there doing our pregame show with Kevin and Norman. I was saying that we're going to have someone in the booth. I appreciate his name's CJ Solar. He's written 2 number 1 hits for a couple of country music stars in this city. And he's got his own album. We've been featuring his stuff throughout the course of the season. So he's going to stop by the booth, and I'm going to kind of give him the floor to talk about what he's up to. I appreciate him stopping by and letting us use his music throughout the course of the season. 93.3 Classic Hits is the radio station here in Nashville. If you struggle with that at any point in time, based on where you live, the Vanderbilt Athletics app is brand new, and I think is very accessible for the radio broadcast. There's a live audio button at the bottom of the Vanderbilt Athletics app. You just hit the live audio button, hit the football broadcast, and that's it, and that's all. And Chris, for those that stream the games and don't watch them straight on cable, I have found if at any point in time you get, and this is a Norm Jordan word, persnickety with the TV announcers because maybe they mispronounce some of our players' names, I have found that if you stream your TV and you pull up our broadcast via streaming, they're almost always synced up identical with maybe like 1 or 2 seconds, which is easy to line up. So I'm simply presenting that as an option as well. If you're looking to sync your TV and radio, especially if you stream both, they tend to line up pretty good. So there you go. There's my long spiel. And as always, we appreciate people pulling us up whenever they pull us up.
Yeah, I hope people will do that. And I look forward to talking with you again very soon.
You too, Chris. It's been a delight.
Yeah, it's fun to have sports to talk about after a long off season of regurgitating the same thing. So here we are.
Who's your Mount Rushmore of people that played second base in 1983? That feels like a sports talk show.
Yeah, that feels like a summer topic for sure. Take care, my friend.
Thanks, Chris.
See ya.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. We thank our presenting sponsor, Jody Jones DDS. We thank our other sponsors, Sutherland and Belk and MyPerfectFranchise.net. If you're interested in sponsoring this podcast, and that's how we make this work, please email me at chrisley70@gmail.com. We also ask that you subscribe to our website, vandysports.com. That is $99 a year. You get things there that you don't get here. And of course, please rate, review, and subscribe where you see our podcast. That helps us get noticed. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at vandysports.com. Follow me at chrisley70. And finally, subscribe to our Vandy Sports YouTube channel as well. Thank you for listening to the Vandy Sports Podcast, which is part of the 440 Network. I'm your host, Chris Lee. We'll catch you with another episode coming very soon.